Remember when BMWs were synonymous with driving fun? Well, I sure do. This 2025 BMW Z4 with the manual gearbox promises a whole lot of fun. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, when this current generation Z4 was introduced, there was no manual gearbox. It was automatic only, but now with the addition of the 6-speed manual, the question in my mind is whether this is a transformative experience or whether it's just another manual. Before we get into what it's like to drive, let's have a look at this in a little more depth. This is still the same Z4 we know and love, but the addition of this manual transmission has necessitated a lot of meaningful and significant changes. We start with the 3-liter inline 6 with a single twin-scroll turbo on it, and it makes 382 horsepower from 5,800 to 6,500 RPM and 369 pounds of torque from 1,800 to 5,000 RPM. Now, this 6-speed manual is very specific to the Z4, including the entire shift mechanism. It is rear-wheel drive, of course. It's got an electronically controlled limited slip diff at the back. And speaking of which, both the M Sport differential and the traction control system were calibrated specifically for this car. Front suspension is based around that front double joint spring strut axle that we've seen on other performance BMWs, 5-link setup at the rear with adaptive dampers. Plus, there are some comprehensive suspension changes for this 6-speed manual, including stiffer front and rear springs, stiffer front anti-roll bar, and revised rear damper settings. Steering is electrically assisted, and it is BMW's familiar variable ratio variable assist setup. It's also been calibrated specifically for this car. Brakes are 4-piston calipers at the front with single piston at the rear. Interesting thing with this manual spec Z4 is that wheels and tires are staggered in the parlance 19s on the front, 20s at the rear, and curb weight of this Z4 manual is 3,514 pounds. Did you know that about 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. I checked the data and 80% of you are not subscribed. So if you enjoy the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Be sure to like this video and share it. And if you don't mind, drop by our merch store. There's lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. It wasn't that long ago that we drove a Z4. It was a little bit of a refresh, I think, but for 2025, the big news is this 6-speed manual. There's really not much that's changed in here with the addition of the shifter and 3 pedals. Behind the wheel, it's still the same basic great setup. Can't complain. Great relationship to the steering wheel, to the shifter, to the pedals. The pedals are laid out perfectly. Heel and toe is no trouble at all. And for those of you who haven't perfected the technique, there is rev matching that is indeed switchable. Given that this is not a full-on M, we've got a kind of standard BMW steering wheel. Still encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3. Thankful lack of shift paddles on the back of the steering wheel, and the rim thickness is definitely M style in that regard. Love the diameter of it, absolutely works perfectly. We don't have the big screen setup across the dash, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Everything is very clear, very legible, and yeah, maybe it's a half generation behind, but in the context of this Z4 Roadster, it works absolutely perfectly. The instrument cluster is still digital, very legible. There's a heads-up display that I can kind of see with my polarized sunglasses, and even the infotainment screen is legible in direct sunlight as we are in right now. It's very easy to read, and I primarily use it on wireless CarPlay. Works absolutely perfect for me. Rest of the ergonomics are very straightforward. BMW, very driver-oriented, and that, of course, supports this in being a driver's car, because BMW still builds cars for drivers. Second-level ergonomics are still very straightforward. BMW, very much driver-oriented, and that's something I really enjoy about this car. The seat itself is very BMW in many ways. Number one, it's on the firmer side, so if you're looking for something that's soft as a sofa, this isn't it. But as a driver's chair, this is spot on. It's firm, supportive, lots of adjustment, and I can get perfectly perfectly positioned behind the wheel and perfectly supported. I cannot complain about these seats at all. In terms of storage, this is a Roadster after all, so there's spots here and there. There's a little net here behind the seats. There's a pass-through here, as a matter of fact. Not that I would ever really use that. I can't imagine anybody using the pass-through here, but nevertheless, you can stick some bits behind the panel here, and the trunk is remarkably spacious. You can easily fit a couple of proper carry-ons in there, no trouble at all. There is a wireless charging pad here and a couple of charge points, room for some stuff, and if you need cup holders, well, they're here under the armrest. As for this being a two-person Roadster, you and your passenger are going to be perfectly comfortable. There's lots of space in here. You certainly don't feel cramped whether the top is up or the top is down, as we're driving it all the time. Yeah, this is quick enough, and the manual works perfectly in terms of being a great match for this 6-cylinder turbo engine. Love the way the entire drivetrain works, but there's a lot more to it than that. We have the e-diff at the back, we've got some Michelin Pilot Sports underneath us, and it all works as a harmonious, very well resolved package in terms of getting power to the ground, whether you're going in a straight line or exiting corners, as we'll talk about in a little bit. But in terms of straight line acceleration, I think it'll do 0 to 60 in about 4.3. Yes, of course, the automatic is quicker, and yes, of course, we're talking about road cars. So talking about straight line acceleration numbers with respect to a road car, whether it's got an automatic gearbox or a manual gearbox, is completely meaningless because we're not in a race, are we? Shift feel is perfect. The gates are very clearly defined. The clutch actuation is clear. Clutch feel is excellent as well. And the clutch is pretty forgiving, so if you're new to a manual, this will not do you wrong. What is impressive is how the 3-liter inline-6 with a turbo works with this manual gearbox, and we more often than not find this engine paired with an automatic, and this is a completely different proposition. And what I find is that there's not any drop in torque between shifts here. So color me impressed with this entire driveline and how well resolved it is. It's not an easy thing to do, that's for sure, and they've done an excellent job mating this engine with this gearbox. There's really no downside here, and on top of that, this engine is ridiculously flexible. We've driven it in other applications, and here it's kind of the same thing. Builds peak torque way low in the rev range, and then it's extremely rewarding when you take it all the way up to redline. It makes peak power near its redline. It's an extremely flexible engine and a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding to drive. To be fair, I do think that BMW is underrating the power and torque outputs of this engine. I think it makes a lot more power and a lot more torque than they say it does, or at least that's what my seat of the pants dyno says. One of the things about electronically controlled limited slip diffs is that they're highly flexible. They use all the systems in the car to calculate how much lock the diff needs, but another thing that they do is open up under braking so that the car is very stable under braking. I have to say that this e-diff is thoroughly resolved and very well programmed. Like, this is just so natural. It feels absolutely intuitive. If we want to launch this quickly, if you want to launch this out of corners, it just works so naturally. It is as if this Z4 was engineered specifically for this gearbox. Even though it's a late addition into the life cycle of this Z4, it works absolutely perfectly. To be fair, longtime viewers of the channel may remember that I wasn't terribly impressed with the manual gearbox in the M4, and we knew that was a last-minute addition because the American market kind of begged for it, and the Germans really didn't seem to care. It wasn't that well executed, but in this case, this manual is spot on. It is so well resolved, and on top of that, this is a wonderfully well resolved package as a road roadster. Oh, and it sounds good too. They've done a great job tuning this exhaust for the manual gearbox. We know a lot of changes have gone into the handling package of this Z4, and it's fairly comprehensive. It's not just a car where they slapped a manual on it. No, they've gone and redone suspension settings. They've gone and redone traction, stability, control programming, as well as the EDIF, and I'm sure the ABS had to be recalibrated to a certain degree as well, because all of these systems work together. But what I find is that this is a much more enjoyable package than the automatic Z4 from a handling standpoint. To me, it seems to have a little bit more compliance, yet still having incredible body and wheel control. The adaptive dampers do a fantastic job of controlling wheel and body motion. And I think if this were a full M, it might be a little spoiled. This, to me, is a perfect roadster. It does exactly what a roadster should. Soaks up the bumps, goes quickly, puts a smile on your face, gets the wind in your hair, and it's a delightful driving experience. As enjoyable as this is in regular driving conditions, it really comes together in the corners. It's such a delightful package. We're just rolling on that torque right now, but down a couple of gears into this corner, just perfect. I can control this car with the steering wheel, with the throttle, and the brake pedal perfectly. And on top of that, at its limits, it's wonderfully neutral in terms of balance. Turn and response is immediate. Yeah, it's an electrically assisted steering system. We don't get a lot of feel direct from the steering wheel, but from the chassis, we certainly do. And that's been a strong suit of Z4s since they were first introduced. And I've always appreciated the quality chassis feel you get from these cars. But in terms of how this steers, it's very intuitive. It's BMW's variable ratio, variable assist kind of setup, and it just seems very natural to me. Now, I am in my sport individual drive mode, and there's two things I do there. I do set the steering to comfort, and I certainly do set the dampers to comfort, because as you can tell, this road is pretty nasty. I don't really need any additional artificial heft with the steering, and certainly I want the dampers to work on nasty roads like this. Any firmer and would get a little bit more punishing, and then we're certainly at risk of the tire losing contact with the road surface on some of these nasty road imperfections. But from a driver standpoint, that's definitely how you want to set up your drive mode. Give it a little bit more compliance in the suspension. And as far as I'm concerned, happy to drive this with the steering set to comfort as well. Over a longer drive, it's a little less fatiguing. It's not something that most people pay attention to. With these suspension settings not being overly firm, we do get a little body roll, and kind of like an MX-5, that lets you know what the chassis is doing. That's a little bit of feedback to the driver as well. It's a quality feedback loop, but it doesn't detract from the driving experience. It's exactly what I'm looking for in a thoroughly enjoyable roadster like this. How do you spec yours? Well, what they've done for the 2025 Z4 M40i with the manual is this signature color combination, and I gotta say, it's a stunner. What you are looking at is the frozen deep green metallic paint and cognac Vernasca leather with contrasting stitching on the inside. Base price in the US is $66,400, and then you add $3,000 for the paint and more of these options. And as tested, this is a total of $75,725 US. In Canada, it's $82,000 base plus $6,000 for the paint and other options, for a grand total of $96,000 as tested, and these prices are before freight and local taxes. In terms of speccing yours, I will say that from practical experience, that this paint does attract a lot of dust very, very quickly. You might want to consider wrapping your Z4 in some kind of matte finish that mimics the finish of the paint, but otherwise, I'd be tempted to go with this color combination. I think it's elegant, it's sophisticated, and who doesn't love green on tan? My verdict, Well, I was already a fan of the Z4, and regular viewers of the show know that. And speaking of regular viewers of the show, you know that we often talk about fuel consumption at this point in the show. And I don't care. Haven't looked, don't care. This car is so enjoyable to drive. I'm looking for any excuse to get behind the wheel. That said, I can't say enough good things about this. Like we were talking about before with the M4, and that was introduced and delivered with a manual here in North America. It just seemed like an afterthought. So I may have had some reservations coming into this driving experience, but I am thoroughly impressed. BMW has hit this one out of the park. If you are looking for a sophisticated rear drive roadster, you cannot go wrong by picking yourself up a Z4 M40i with this manual gearbox. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 BMW Z4 M40i with the 6-speed manual. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring. So please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even BMW Z4s. Here's a question for you. Is this manual gearbox in the Z4 a revival, or maybe a desperate attempt by BMW to distract us from the fact that they make electric cars now? Just kidding. I really like that i5, and I think BMW is going to do some good electrics in the future, but I sure hope they keep making this thing. This thing is brilliant.